You like to think you're in control of your thoughts, right? That your memories are accurate, your decisions logical, your beliefs well-founded. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Your brain is a master storyteller, and it's been lying to you since the day you were born. Not out of malice, but survival. It edits reality, distorts the past, and convinces you of things that aren't even true, and you believe it. Today, I'm going to show you exactly how your brain fools you, and more importantly, how to spot the lies before they run your life. You wake up every morning believing you see the world exactly as it is. The colors, the shapes, the faces, they all feel real, authentic, unfiltered. But here's the kicker. You don't. What you're experiencing isn't the truth. It's your brain's version of the truth. Imagine putting on a pair of tinted glasses at birth, except you never knew you were wearing them. Everything you've ever seen, felt, or believed has passed through that tint, and you've been convinced it's reality. Your eyes don't see the world, they collect raw data. Millions of bits of information every second. But here's the problem, your brain can't handle all of it. Processing every detail would overwhelm you in a fraction of a second. So instead, it cheats, it filters, it edits, it deletes. You get a highlight reel, not the full movie. It's like a news channel. You only see the stories that make it to the broadcast, not the countless ones left out. And here's where it gets wild. The stories your brain chooses to show you are based on survival, not accuracy. Think about a time you were walking down a busy street. You probably didn't notice the cracks in the sidewalk, the faded paint on the shop door, or the exact number of clouds in the sky. Your brain discarded all that information because it wasn't immediately useful. But if a car suddenly swerved toward you, every nerve in your body would snap to attention. Not because the car magically became more real, but because your brain decided it was worth putting on your broadcast. Survival wins. Truth comes second. This filtering is why two people can witness the same event and swear they saw completely different things. It's not that one person is lying. It's that both are telling the truth according to their personal filtered version of reality. Their brains built two different movies from the same raw footage. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Both movies can leave out important scenes or completely rewrite them. One of the most powerful examples of this is in how we see color. You might believe color exists out there in the world, but it doesn't. What's really out there are different wavelengths of light. Your brain takes those wavelengths, assigns them labels like red or blue, and void. The world appears vibrant, but it's a trick. A useful, beautiful trick, but a trick nonetheless. If your brain processed wavelengths differently, the world would look completely different to you. And in fact, for other animals, it does. Bees can see ultraviolet light we'll never see without special equipment. To them, flowers don't look like they do to us. They have patterns and colors invisible to human eyes, which means your reality isn't reality at all. It's just your reality. The same goes for your sense of space, time, even motion. When you're driving on the highway, you feel like you're moving at a steady speed, but in truth, your brain is smoothing out countless micro adjustments, vibrations, and shifts in perspective. It gives you a seamless experience because reality, the messy, jittery, chaotic version, would be impossible to navigate without losing your mind. And here's the twist. This filtered perception is not a flaw. It's the reason you've survived. If our ancestors' brains had been obsessed with absolute truth, they'd have been too distracted by the color of the sky or the exact pattern of shadows to notice the lion stalking them in the grass. Your brain evolved to keep you alive, not to keep you informed. But there's a cost. Because once you understand that what you see, hear, and feel is not the unfiltered truth, you realize how easy it is for misunderstandings, disagreements, and even self-deception to creep in. The brain's edits make life manageable, but they also make you vulnerable. You can miss opportunities, misjudge people, and cling to beliefs that aren't entirely accurate simply because the movie in your head left some things out. The most dangerous part, you'll never notice it happening. Your brain doesn't tell you, hey, I cut some scenes and changed the lighting in this one. It hands you the finished product and says, here's the truth. And you believe it without question. That's why the first step in overcoming the lies your brain tells you is brutally simple, but painfully hard. Admit you're being fooled. Because the moment you accept that your version of reality is just one version, not the version, you start seeing the cracks in the story. And when you see those cracks, you open the door to seeing the world as it truly is. So no, you're not living in reality. You're living in your brain's reality. And the sooner you realize that, the more power you'll have to rewrite the story. If what you see isn't the full truth, wait until you find out what's going on with your memories. We like to think of memory as a vault, safe, secure place where our experiences are stored exactly as they happened. We imagine pulling out a perfect recording, pressing play, and reliving the event exactly the way it occurred. But that's not how it works. Your memories aren't video files. They're more like stories, and here's the twist. The story changes every time you remember it. When something happens to you, your brain doesn't store a perfect copy of the event. It stores fragments, the smell in the air, a flash of color, a strong emotion, a few key details. Later, when you recall that event, your brain takes those fragments and starts filling in the gaps. But it doesn't fill them with neutral truth. It fills them with guesses, assumptions, and sometimes bits and pieces borrowed from other memories. And because your brain is such a good storyteller, it convinces you the whole thing happened exactly the way you remember it. Think about it like this. Every time you open a Word document, make a few edits and hit save. You're not just adding information, you're overwriting the original. That's what happens every time you recall a memory. You're not pulling out a dusty old file. You're reconstructing it on the spot. And that reconstruction is vulnerable to influence. If you've told the story of an event over and over, your brain starts to prioritize the version you tell, not the version that actually happened. This is why eyewitness testimony is notoriously unreliable. Two people can watch the exact same incident and later recall wildly different details, and each will swear they're telling the truth. It's not about honesty, it's about how memory works. The human brain is less like a camera and more like a painter. And sometimes the painter has a very active imagination. Emotions also play a huge role in shaping memory. When something is emotionally intense, a breakup, a car accident, a major win, your brain stamps that moment with extra significance. But here's the problem. Emotion doesn't make the memory more accurate. It just makes it feel more real. In fact, high emotion can distort memory even further because it shifts your focus. You might remember the panic in someone's voice, but forget what they were actually saying. You might recall the blinding brightness of a moment, but miss the details of the scene. And then there's suggestion. Your brain is surprisingly easy to influence. If someone confidently tells you, remember that time you spilled coffee all over me at the office? Your brain starts to search for evidence. If it can't find it, sometimes it just creates it. Before you know it, you have a memory of an event that never even happened. Scientists have shown that false memories can be implanted with just a few convincing details and a little repetition. Your brain takes the bait, stitches the pieces together, and now you've got a memory that feels just as real as the genuine ones. It's humbling to realize that the past you're so sure of is actually a moving target. The argument you had last year, the conversation you replay in your mind, the childhood moment you think shaped you. None of them are exactly as you remember. And the more you revisit them, the more they change. That's not a sign of weakness or poor intelligence. It's just how the brain works. The truth is, memory isn't about accuracy. It's about utility. Your brain shapes your memories to help you navigate the present and prepare for the future, not to give you a perfect historical record. So what does this mean for you? It means you have to hold your memories lightly. It means when you feel absolutely certain about what happened, you have to leave room for the possibility that the certainty is an illusion. And it means being careful about how often you dwell on or retell a story, because each retelling is another chance for your brain to tweak the script. The hardest part is this: you can never fully know how much of what you remember is true. You can gather evidence, compare notes with others, and look for records, but inside your own mind, it will always feel real, even if parts of it never happened. That's the trickiest and sometimes the scariest lie your brain tells. If what you see can be filtered and what you remember can be rewritten, then it's no surprise that what you think can also be hijacked. And the prime suspect in that hijacking, your emotions. We like to imagine ourselves as logical beings who occasionally feel emotions, but in reality, we're emotional beings who occasionally think logically. Most of the time, our feelings don't just influence our thoughts, they decide what we think, how we interpret situations, and even what we believe to be true. Think about the last time you were really angry at someone. In that moment, your mind wasn't running a balanced, objective analysis of the situation. No, every detail that came to mind was something that supported your anger. You remembered every past annoyance, every mistake they ever made, every reason they didn't deserve the benefit of the doubt. The emotional state you were in filtered your thoughts, magnifying anything that aligned with the feeling and discarding anything that didn't. The same thing happens with fear. If you're anxious about something, let's say a job interview, your brain will suddenly become an overactive prediction machine, serving up worst case scenarios like a 24-hour fear channel. You'll start thinking, what if I freeze? What if they hate me? What if I say something stupid? The brain isn't showing you those possibilities because they're the most likely. It's showing them because fear has taken the driver's seat. And when fear drives, it doesn't care about accuracy, it cares about survival. Joy, on the other hand, can make you blind to danger. When you're in love or celebrating a big win, your brain floods you with feel-good chemicals that change your judgment. Suddenly, the risk seems smaller, the problems seem solvable, and you start making decisions you wouldn't make in a colder emotional state. This is why we have sayings like, love is blind, because in many ways it literally is. The chemical rush clouds your perception and quiets the logical voice that would normally warn you to slow down. Emotions don't just color your thoughts, they can rewrite facts in real time. If you've ever been in a heated argument, you've probably noticed how your interpretation of what the other person is saying changes with your emotional temperature. The same exact sentence can sound like an insult when you're angry, a joke when you're happy, or a plea for help when you're compassionate. The words don't change, your emotional filter does. What's even more deceptive is that when your emotions take over, they don't announce themselves. Your brain doesn't say, warning, these thoughts have been heavily influenced by fear, or caution, joy levels are impairing your judgment. No, the thoughts just arrive and they feel true. And when a thought feels true, you tend to believe it without question. That's where emotions become dangerous, not because they exist, but because they make fiction feel like fact. It's also why two people can experience the exact same situation and walk away with completely different takeaways. One might see it as a disaster, the other as an opportunity. The difference isn't the situation itself, it's the emotional lens each person is looking through. And the most challenging part, that lens can change for you from one day to the next. Something that felt like a tragedy last year might now seem like a blessing in disguise, and vice versa. This is why emotional awareness is so critical. If you can pause long enough to recognize what you're feeling before you act or decide, you give yourself a fighting chance to see past the distortion. You might still feel the anger, the fear, the excitement, but you'll know that those emotions are not the full picture. They're a part of the data, not the whole story. Of course, this is easier said than done. Emotions are fast. They arrive in milliseconds, long before your logical brain has a chance to step in. They evolved that way for a reason. Speed can save your life in a crisis. But in the modern world, where not every threat is a charging predator, that speed can lead you into decisions you'll regret later. The real power comes when you learn to slow down the process. When you feel the emotional surge, instead of immediately reacting, you can ask yourself, what else could be true here? That one question is like prying open a door in a locked room. It lets other possibilities in, possibilities that your emotions would have kept out. Because the truth is, your feelings are not facts. They are signals. And like it can be strong, they can be weak, and they can be misleading. And until you understand that, you'll keep mistaking the volume of the signal for the accuracy of the message. If your senses can be tricked, your memories rewritten, and your thoughts hijacked by emotion, then it's no surprise that your decisions are also being quietly steered by forces you don't even notice. These forces have a name: cognitive biases. They're like invisible puppeteers, pulling the strings in the background while you believe you're making every move freely. And the strangest part is these biases aren't rare glitches. They're built in features of the human brain. A cognitive bias is simply a mental shortcut. It's your brain's way of saving time and energy by using patterns, rules of thumb, and assumptions instead of doing a deep, rational analysis every single time. In theory, that sounds helpful. In practice, it means your brain often takes you to conclusions that feel right but are actually flawed. Take confirmation bias, for example. This is your brain's tendency to look for information that supports what you already believe while ignoring or dismissing anything that challenges it. If you think someone is rude, you'll start noticing every little thing they do that feels unfriendly while conveniently forgetting the times they were kind. You're not lying to yourself on purpose. Your brain is just filtering reality to protect your existing belief. And once that belief feels confirmed, it's even harder to shake. Then there's the availability heuristic, the bias that makes you think something is more common or likely simply because it's easier to recall. If you've just seen a news story about a plane crash, you might start thinking flying is incredibly dangerous, even though statistically it's far safer than driving. Your brain equates easy to remember with happens a lot, and that quick mental math can lead to fear-driven decisions. One of the most dangerous biases is the halo effect. This is when your impression of one trait about a person influences your perception of everything else about them. If someone is physically attractive, you might unconsciously assume they're smarter, kinder, or more capable than they really are. If someone makes a bad first impression, you might undervalue them in ways that have nothing to do with reality. It's a bias that can shape careers, relationships, and even justice in a courtroom. And yet most people never realize it's happening. And then there's the sunk cost fallacy, which traps you in situations simply because you've already invested time, money, or effort. Maybe you've stayed in a job you hate because you've been there for years, or kept watching a terrible movie because you've already sat through an hour. Logically, the past investment is gone. You can't get it back. But your brain whispers, don't waste what you've already put in. And you keep going even when quitting would serve you better. These biases are everywhere, shaping the way you shop, the way you vote, the way you choose friends, the way you spend your free time. And because they feel so natural, you almost never question them. That's exactly what makes them so powerful. They operate in the shadows, guiding your choices while you feel completely in control. The real danger is that when you don't recognize these biases, they can harden your perspective and narrow your world. You can become so locked into your own mental patterns that you can't see alternative viewpoints or better options. And because the decisions still feel rational, you don't even realize you're stuck. The first step in breaking free is awareness. Once you know these biases exist, you can start catching yourself in the act. You can pause and ask, am I making this choice because it's the best option or because my brain is taking a shortcut? That single moment of reflection can be enough to break the autopilot and open the door to better thinking. But here's the hard truth. You'll never completely eliminate these biases. They're too deeply embedded in how the human brain works. The goal isn't to erase them. It's to learn to see them. Because once you can spot the strings, you're no longer a puppet. The lies your brain tells you aren't always loud, obvious, or dramatic. Sometimes they're quiet whispers that nudge you just a little off course. And if you don't pay attention, you'll end up somewhere you never meant to be, wondering how you got there. One of the most dangerous tricks your brain plays on you is also one of the most seductive, the feeling of certainty. That unshakable sense that you are right, that your understanding is correct, that your conclusion is the truth. The problem is the feeling of being right and actually being right are not the same thing. And the confidence trap is what happens when your certainty blinds you to the possibility that you might be wrong. This is why people will argue endlessly, even in the face of overwhelming evidence to the contrary. When you feel certain, it's not just a thought, it's a physical sensation. Your brain rewards you with a rush of chemicals that reinforce the feeling. That rush is addictive, and it can make you double down even when the facts start slipping out from under you. Think about the last time you were absolutely convinced about something trivial, maybe the name of an actor in a movie, the lyrics to a song, or a detail from a memory. You probably spoke with confidence, told other people you were sure, maybe even made a bet. And then later when you found out you were wrong, it was almost shocking. You didn't just misremember, you felt certain. That's the trap. Certainty feels like proof, but it's not. The brain evolved to favor confidence because in the past, hesitation could be costly. Our ancestors who acted decisively in a moment of danger, even if they weren't 100% correct, had a better chance of survival than those who froze in doubt. The problem is, in the modern world, acting quickly and confidently doesn't always lead to the best outcome. But the brain still rewards that feeling with the same chemical cocktail, making us mistake conviction for accuracy. This is why experts can sometimes be wrong in spectacular ways. The more knowledge someone accumulates in a specific area, the more likely they are to trust their instincts without questioning them. That's not arrogance. It's the brain building a pattern. I've been right about this before, so I must be right again. The danger comes when the context changes, but the person doesn't realize it. The same mental shortcuts that once led to accurate conclusions now lead them straight into error. And because the certainty still feels the same, they don't catch it until it's too late. It's also why arguments with other people often go nowhere. When two people are equally certain but believe opposite things, it doesn't matter how many facts are exchanged. Each person's brain is more focused on defending its position than updating its beliefs. In fact, studies show that presenting evidence against someone's deeply held belief can make them dig in even deeper. That's the confidence trap tightening its grip. One of the most humbling things you can do is to learn to separate the feeling of certainty from the reality of truth. It means practicing the ability to say, I could be wrong, not as a sign of weakness, but as a sign of strength. It means holding your opinions with the same care you'd hold a delicate object, firm enough that it doesn't slip away, but loose enough that you can let go when you realize it's not what you thought it was. This doesn't mean doubting yourself at every turn or living in a constant state of hesitation. It means being aware that the brain can create a powerful illusion of accuracy even in the absence of actual proof. And it means surrounding yourself with people and information that challenge you instead of only those that confirm what you already believe. The hardest part is catching yourself in the moment because the confidence trap works so subtly. You won't feel yourself slipping into it. You'll feel like you're standing firmly on solid ground. That's why it's called a trap. It doesn't lure you in with obvious danger. It lures you in with comfort. And when you're comfortable, you stop questioning. The truth is, certainty feels safe, but safety isn't the same as reality. And until you're willing to test your beliefs against the possibility of being wrong, you'll never know if the ground you're standing on is solid or just a convincing illusion. By now, you've seen how your brain filters reality, rewrites your memories, lets your emotions run the show, falls for invisible biases, and traps you with the seductive pull of certainty. So the question becomes, if these lies are built into your wiring, what can you actually do about them? The answer isn't to fight your brain like it's the enemy. You can't win that battle. The answer is to learn how to work with it, to reprogram the narrative so your brain serves you instead of steering you blindly. The first step is awareness. That might sound cliché, but it's the foundation. If you've ever had a song stuck in your head, you know that the moment you become aware of it, you can choose whether to hum along or turn on something else. Your thoughts work the same way. When you know your brain is prone to certain tricks, you can catch yourself in the act. You can notice, wait, am I seeing this clearly or just through my emotional lens? Or, hey, am I remembering this? Or am I remembering my last version of this story? That pauses the wedge that can pry open a whole new perspective. The second step is seeking out alternative viewpoints, not just passively, but actively. If you surround yourself only with people who think like you, your brain's confirmation bias will thrive unchecked. But when you deliberately put yourself in situations where your ideas are challenged, you force your mind to expand. That doesn't mean you have to agree with everything you hear. It means you give yourself a broader pool of information to work from. Every new perspective you encounter is like adding another camera angle to your understanding of reality. Another powerful tool is slowing down your decision making whenever possible. Your brain loves speed. It wants quick answers so it can move on. But when you deliberately add time between impulse and action, you give your logical mind a chance to catch up with your emotional and instinctive reactions. Even a few seconds can be enough to shift from automatic to intentional. Before you send that angry text, make that big purchase, or commit to a belief, give yourself the space to ask what else might be true here. Reframing is another skill that changes everything. Your brain often locks onto a single interpretation of an event. This is bad. That was unfair. I failed. But when you deliberately look for a different interpretation, you create mental flexibility. Instead of, I failed, you can choose, I learned something. Instead of, that person insulted me, you can choose, maybe they were having a bad day. You're not denying reality, you're expanding it. You're training your brain to stop clinging to one narrow frame and start exploring the bigger picture. Journaling can be surprisingly effective here. When you write down your thoughts, you slow them down enough to examine them. You can spot patterns, biases, and emotional triggers that are invisible in the rush of daily life. And once you see them on paper, they lose some of their power. They go from being unquestioned truths swirling in your head to words you can challenge, rewrite, or discard. It's also worth paying attention to your physical state, because your brain's lies don't just come from mental processes. They're influenced by your body, lack of sleep, poor nutrition, and chronic stress all make you more vulnerable to distorted thinking. When you're tired or depleted, your brain leans even harder on shortcuts and emotional reactions. Taking care of your body isn't just good for your health, it's an act of mental self-defense. Finally, practice humility. The more you can accept that you will never see the full truth, that your brain will always be editing, filtering, and spinning stories, the more open you'll be to correcting course. Humility isn't about doubting yourself endlessly. It's about being flexible enough to change your mind when new information comes along. It's about being more committed to learning than to being right. Reprogramming your brain's narrative isn't about creating a perfect, objective view of reality. That's impossible. It's about building a relationship with your own mind where you can spot the distortions, challenge the stories, and choose which ones you allow to shape your life. It's about stepping out of autopilot and into awareness, so you're not just a passenger being taken wherever your brain decides to go. We've spent this time together peeling back the layers of how your brain works, and more importantly, how it sometimes works against you. We've seen how your senses give you only a filtered version of reality, how your memories are more like rewrites than recordings, how your emotions can hijack your thinking, how hidden biases pull the strings, how the feeling of certainty can blind you, and how you can begin to reprogram the story your mind tells. And maybe the most important thing to take away from all of this is that being fooled by your brain doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. Every one of us is walking around in our own customized version of reality, doing the best we can with the version we've been given. The difference between staying stuck and growing is whether you choose to keep accepting that version as the truth, or whether you start questioning it. Awareness is your flashlight. Every time you shine it on a bias, a false memory, an emotional filter, or an overconfident assumption, you cut through the fog just a little more. You'll never remove all of it. No one does. But you can create enough clarity to make better choices, to see people and situations more fairly, and to live a life that's not just on autopilot.